Wow. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I would like to welcome you to the third edition of the Trade with Africa Business Summit. Oh my goodness, it's such a pleasure to have you all. I see people joining. Tama, thank you for joining. We see our speakers from all over the world joining. Wow, it's such an honor. It's sad that we couldn't meet together this year in person, but we have so much planned and so many amazing engagement opportunities to share with you. We want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Afreximbank, Westrock Coffee, and the work that they are doing in advancing trade with Africa. You're going to be hearing from them today. This is such a pleasure as well. I'm just super excited to have you all. We have speakers from Morocco, Casablanca, Morocco. We have from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We have from Cairo, Egypt. We have Lagos, Nigeria, Accra, Ghana, and we have from South Africa. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but obviously we also have speakers right here in the US, Chicago, and different parts in DC. So this is truly, truly, truly a global engagement. And again, thank you so much and welcome. Just to share a few guidelines before we officially kick off, I just want to share a few guides with you. So we already know, for those registered and in the community, we already know that there's been pre-event, and then we're also going to have post-event virtual engagement on our trade platform, www.nazaru.trade. I already see, I was going to teach you how to navigate it before, but I already see that our attendees from all over the world are already in there. I want to encourage you to add your picture, create your profile, put your description, why you're there, what you're looking for when it comes to trade with Africa, what role you play, what industry you are part of. So if you're in the financing industry or if you're a policymaker, we want to know who you are on the platform. Because one of the very important things with the platform is that we know that, in the past when we've brought people together for events, then they'll reach out and say, Toyin, we really met amazing people. We did collect their business cards, but is there really a way for us to stay plugged in, to stay connected? So that's why we actually started that platform. And then when COVID-19 happened, we were like, wow, that's such a great way for us to just move our engagements virtually. So yes, please take a moment. For those that are already there, please do update your profile, connect with people as we're introducing you to our speakers, our esteemed speakers from around the world. If there's anything they share that really connects with you, please feel free, even after this event, to engage with them, introduce yourself, let them know what it is you're trying to solve for. And I'll tell you, each of your speakers, they're what I call gatekeepers. They have keys, keys to the kingdom, in terms of if you want to enter a new market from a market access standpoint, these are key people when it comes to trade with Africa that we believe then can be a game changer for your business. And that's why, they're here. And I feel so honored that they said yes. So thank you again. The second thing I want to call out is that we're operating on multiple time zones. So right here in Chicago, we're just barely waking up. It's 8 a.m. here in Chicago, and the agenda is actually set to Chicago Central Time. I know, on the West Coast, it's still 6 a.m. But guess what? We have people joining us from Kenya, where it's 4 p.m., from Cairo, where it's 3 p.m., from Nigeria, where it's 2 p.m., Morocco, 2 p.m., Ghana, 1 p.m., London, 2 p.m., Zimbabwe. Yes, we do have people joining us all the way from Zimbabwe. It's 3 p.m., and on the Eastern Standard Time here in the US is 9 a.m. So I just want to acknowledge that we know that you all are all over the world. And I want to thank everyone for accommodating, because we really had to, for some, start later, for those in the US start earlier. But wow, this is the global market. This is what we do, right? Is being able to work as one live and be able to adjust our time zone. So thank you again for being flexible. So on that note, I do want you to be careful in terms of when you look at the agenda, which can be accessed from www.twasummit.com/agenda. You can see and follow what we're doing there. But remember again, the agenda is set in Central Standard Time, but you would have to, so if you're in Kenya, you have to do the calculation and try and synchronize somehow. I wish there was a solution that could automatically just, convert the agenda to multiple time zones so we could send it to you, but you would have to do that. Now, for those of us that are registered and directly in the Zoom, please do use the inbuilt Zoom Q&A section. So as we're going to start in bringing on our speakers, we want to make sure that you can engage inside the Zoom, and let's keep the chat area for introduction and engagement. Let's keep that going. So for social engagement, in terms of if you want to follow the conversation, let's use #TradeWithAfrica. For most of our speakers, we will also be showing you on our slides their Twitter handle. So if they say anything at all that resonates with you, please, tag them, share, and then use the #TradeWithAfrica. You can also use #Africa and let the world know that this is such an important conversation that we're having. Now, I know in the past people would ask questions in terms of the slides and the content that our speakers and we will be sharing during this event, that where can they access it. I would like to share that we will keep it inside of the trade platform, www.nazaru.trade. So all our attendees will actually have access to post-event information. So with the permission of our speakers, we'll include their data and their slides on that platform, which you can access. So finally, I also want to share that we'll be live streaming the kickoff section, which is the next 1-2 hours of our event. The event lasts today and tomorrow, but we would live stream courtesy of our sponsors. We'll make it accessible to people that are not fully registered, but also want to follow the conversation. So yes, sit back. I'm super excited again to welcome you officially to this event. So for those who may not know me, my name is Toyin Siri. I have the honor of being the founder of the Trade with Africa Business Summit, and I am the CEO of Nazaru LLC. Wow, this has been an amazing journey that I've been on. And I will say that the Trade with Africa Business Summit, it's a movement, and we've laid a solid foundation, and we are moving forward with all the work that we're doing. And I'm super excited that you all are coming on this journey with us. This is not a journey just for myself. Ever since we started, we've been mobilizing support and mobilizing similar-minded individuals, key stakeholders. And what we do is we convene trade experts, investors, policy makers, business community leaders, the youth, the diaspora community. Because one thing I strongly believe is that when we talk about Trade with Africa, this is not a journey for one person. In fact, if you want to be successful on your journey when it comes to Trade with Africa, it is extremely important that you get into a solid community and you strengthen your not just your knowledge or market information, but you also strengthen your network. And that's one of the beautiful things that we consistently build on. In our first year, we hosted it in Bentonville, Arkansas. That's the home of the world's largest retailer. That's where I used to call home. And one of the things I saw was that when we're trying to integrate and say introduce more African exporters and business executives into the global market, because the global market is open. The regional market is opening with the Continental Free Trade Agreement, but the global market is also available, but we have to do it systematically. And for the first year in 2018, we brought buyers and sellers. And one thing that came out of that event was realizing that we also needed to bring the financing institution into that mix. So what we did for the second edition, we were so happy that the African Export-Import Bank, one of Africa's leading premier multilateral institution came on board last year, and they flew into Chicago to educate us in terms of the trade financing work that they do. And I'm also very happy to tell you that we actually have members of Afreximbank with us today, and they'll be sharing with us the work they are doing even with COVID-19 right now, and how they are working with the various governments on the continent. Not only Afrexim, last year we also had the US Export-Import Bank, because for diaspora community members that are here looking to connect back with the continent commercially, we do know that there are resources that the US government has in place to fast track and grow trade with Africa. So we were able to bring in Exim Bank, and we do have the content as well from last year to share with us in terms of what those resources are, how do they support individuals and businesses that wants to grow trade with Africa. Last year, we were also able to bring the African Union team that was responsible for establishing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that has now built the world's largest trade bloc. And our Ambassador Muchanga and his team were well represented, and they shared with us the amazing work that they're doing to unify trade, to make it commonized, and to streamline and increase intra-African trade, which also opens up new opportunities, not just for Africans, but for investors looking to invest in Africa as well. So this year, we're building on that. We've laid a solid foundation, and this year you're going to be hearing, so what next? Okay, with all of the information we have, with all of the work that is going on, this year we want to say, what next? We've seen the devastation that COVID-19 has had all over the world, but I tell you, Africa's story is the great side of Africa hasn't been seen. Africa is the next economic zone of the world, with the statistics and everything that we're going to, our esteemed speakers will be sharing with you. I know today you don't really want to hear from me. We have amazing economists and great people that would be sharing you with the real data. But for me, I just want to lay a solid foundation so that people understand why this is so important. And one of the things I want to do now, which is a slight adjustment, is that I want to bring on a message from Scott Ford. For those that have been a part of this journey from the very, very beginning, Scott Ford would not be a new player. You already know him. He's the single largest private investor in Rwanda. He's an American. He also advises the president of Rwanda. Many people know that Rwanda has become a shining light among the nations of Africa, but what may not be clear is how did Rwanda become the Rwanda that we know today? So for our first year of events, Scott Ford was one of our keynotes, and he basically, spent almost 2 hours with us, telling us exactly what he has done over the last 15 years in Rwanda. But today, I also have a key message from him in terms of, again, what's next, what that looks like today, the success of the Westrock coffee, how they've built it, how they've connected the supply chain. And once I play that video, I'll come back to also share with you a little bit about the Trade with Africa framework that we now use to guide the work that we do. So give me a moment to cue that video and share that with you shortly.
Hello, my name is Scott Ford. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Westrock Coffee Company. It's a pleasure to be with you here at the Trade with Africa Business Summit, and I'd like to thank Toyin for inviting me to appear, even if it's through video this year. Westrock Coffee Company is comprised of Westrock Coffee Roasting in the United States, S&D Coffee and Tea in the United States, Falcon Coffees in the United Kingdom, and of course, Rwanda Trading Company in Rwanda, which was the beginning business of the entire enterprise that we started in 2009. As one of the largest employers in Rwanda today, and one of the largest, I guess, private investors in Rwanda, it has been our thrill to see that economy boom in the last 10 years or so. What we've tried to do at Rwanda Trading Company was establish an export business that paid as much as it could to the local farmer while still making enough of a profit to stay in business. And that, with a low C price, has been difficult the last few years. But we've been able to do it largely because we've invested in agronomy training programs for the farmers at the ground level. The agronomy training program, or ATP as we call it, goes through how do you manage not only your crop, but how do you manage your finances, and how do you invest in your community so the generation behind you can benefit from your labor. It's the hallmark of the business of Westrock Coffee, if you will. It's the heart and soul of why we do what we do. Everything else was to create a platform to pull volume from those kinds of supply chains up from the farmers at origin. We're now in 21 different countries around the world as an origin operator. And I guess at this point, after the purchase of S&D, we're the largest custom coffee roasting company in the United States. We have customers like Walmart and Sam's, which are always happy to be identified with us, which we appreciate, as well as our first big hotel chain was Omni Hotels. And through the S&D purchase, we now serve many, frankly, most of the largest major national restaurant chains that you've heard of, at least in some part of the country, where we're starting to provide service on a broader basis, frankly, even next year. As a long-term investor in Rwanda, and frankly, we have offices in Ethiopia and Uganda, and we have been in Tanzania in the past, I'm frequently asked, what advice would you give to political leaders in that part of the country in terms of business development? And, I think you can appreciate this. I'll decline to offer advice. I do, from time to time, get asked what I think about something, and I'm glad to offer what I think about things, but I don't have any specific advice for anyone who has already a very difficult job and doesn't need Monday morning quarterback from the cheap seats over here. I'll say this, as an investor, what we've looked for is stable tax and regulatory policy. Politicians campaign and get elected and come to power through a number of means that don't have anything to do with the business, regulatory, and tax policy. But they attract capital based on how they execute that very tax and regulatory policy. And you don't even really have to have a strong position one way or the other on what that is. Is it a progressive tax system? Is it a flat tax system? Is it a VAT tax? Is it an income tax? It's really not so important what people select. That's up to the individuals in each country, but that it is stable, that it's protected in the court of law so that everyone is equal under the law, playing under the same set of rules, and everybody knows them. Where that's true, business can flourish. Where that's not true, everyone departs. That's just the nature of it. If that's helpful, I'd say eat the fruit and spit out the seeds. One of the things that came out of the work we did in Rwanda, where we started with agronomy training, was what we now call FDV, or Farmer Direct Verified. And it really is the testament of 10 years of work by a large number of people in Rwanda, in the UK, in the United States, in Colombia, in Peru, where we pulled together on an IT platform the entire chain of custody and information that goes with that custody transition, including cost put in, the margin, and the price transferred all the way along the supply chain. So we now have, and we're thrilled with this, you can see it in some of the products that we have in Sam's Club, the Farmer Direct Verified tag on the bag. You can actually scan the QR code and see the very individual farmers whose crop makes up that bag. People, when we started this project 5 years ago, to trace every single bean all the way through to the finished retail product, people told us it couldn't be done. People told us it was impossible. The thought leaders in the industry, the coffee industry, told us it was impossible. But we knew it wasn't. If you can trace a bit all the way through a telecom network, you can trace a bean all the way through a coffee supply network. So we were thrilled this last year when Sam's Club rolled out Farmer Direct Verified on one of their core items, and people can see the entire custody link all the way back down to the farmer, including her name, and what Sam's can see is not only her name and who participated, but the quantity she brought in, the quality she brought in, and the price she was paid that day for the coffee that's in that bag. I think 5 years from now, there won't be a major brand in the world who doesn't insist on that fully traceable, IT chain traceable type of product in their offering. But we spent 10 years trying to build it, and we are thrilled. Many millions of dollars later, we are thrilled that that is now available, and the incremental cost of each transaction is relatively close to zero, which allows us to pass the value all the way back to the farmer and the transparency all the way up to the retail customer. So I'd like to thank you again for your time today. It's been a pleasure to get to introduce you to some of you introduced again, you to Westrock Coffee Company. It's always great to be part of this great trade group and the effort that's going into building trade between the U.S. and Africa. I am a huge bull on the continent of Africa, and in East Africa, where I've got a little bit more background, in particular, just because of where I've spent my time, what I see going on there and how capitalism and free market trading is really getting its roots established, I think this generation and the generation to come after it will reap the benefit of that in untold multitudes. Good luck to you all.
Wow. So that's a message from Westrock Coffee, Scott Ford of Westrock Coffee, and I just really, truly appreciate his support, his help. And as you can see from the video, in fact, he's at the cutting edge when it comes to blockchain technology being integrated into the agriculture food supply chain. So basically, part of what that has led us to, with all the engagements we've had with various stakeholders around the world, for this year, I'm happy to share with you the Trade with Africa framework. The framework came as a result of the various conversations I've had the honor of engaging with from all the stakeholders. And one of the things this framework is attempting to do is to narrow down where the opportunities are. Because people say, Toyin, we've heard you, trade with Africa, we hear you, it makes sense. But how do we execute that? What does it look like? So for us, this particular event for this year, we decided to narrow down on pillars of trade: agriculture value chain, manufacturing, retail, and distribution and infrastructure development. But we also know that you have to have enabling technology support that. When it comes to cross-border transactions, you have to be able to streamline import and export, so let's just speak, for example, in agriculture. If you're in Africa and you want to develop a solid agriculture food chain, you're going to need machines, you're going to need equipment, you will need to import certain things, and maybe you also want to export. What does that look like, right? So what we are now attempting to do with the framework is to start building a knowledge base that people in the future that want to really move into this space, they don't have to start from beginning where we started. They can literally access the data points and the resources and the network that can support that. Tomorrow, you'll be hearing from Masabata. She's one of the amazing young individuals that I would say they are the future of the continent. And as a young lady, I'm so proud of the work she's doing in South Africa in the agriculture space. And tomorrow you'll be hearing from her. Tomorrow you'll also be hearing more from me around the framework and how we would like to use it to drive future engagement. But for now, we're going to save some time, and then I'm going to bring us on to our next speaker, Dr. Andrew Nevin. Dr. Andrew Nevin is from the PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's the Chief Economist for Africa at PwC in Lagos, Nigeria. He's joining us from Lagos, Nigeria. And I'm going to ask him to join, and I'll pull up his slides as well. Dr. Andrew. Dr. Andrew, are you okay? I was just told he joined as an attendee, so let me promote. Okay, can you, I'm going to be sharing your screen, Dr. And your slides, but can you unmute? Are you able to unmute to talk to us? Okay. Dr. Andrew, okay. Can you hear us? Can you speak now?
Oh, hi.
Oh,
Yes,
fantastic.
good to be here. Sorry, it's so
Okay.
complicated.
No, that's fine, Dr. Andrew. That's okay. That's okay. Please, I have your slide on. I hope people can see your slides. Just let me know what page you want me to be on.
All right, so I'll tell you. So I only have a few slides today and a few things to say. But first, let me great thank you to Toyin for all her efforts on this. As she said, I mean, we've been friends for a number of years. I'm based in Lagos. I've been there more than a decade. I want to, in this sort of opening session, just kind of situate. I mean, obviously everyone here is a fan or a potential fan of Africa's Africa Rising, if we want to use that term. But I just want to give a few more numbers just to put this all in context of how immensely, not only the opportunity, but from a global viewpoint, kind of the shift that is happening right now, and is essentially going to put Africa at the center of the globe. And so I brought a few demographic slides on this, and maybe Toyin, you can go to the next slide. But even these slides that I brought are out of date. For those of you who follow the news closely, you might have seen 2 weeks ago that the UN released a new projection of global population, which incredibly important. I mean, I think some good news, but also some real implications for how the world will evolve. I mean, to begin with, they reduced by 2 billion people the projection of population in 2100. And the basic reason for this is that fertility rates dropping fast around the world, much faster than many people realize. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone on this, on the webinar today and tomorrow understands that countries like Japan, China, Germany, Russia, Korea, Poland, Italy, all have declining populations now and have quite rapidly declining working age populations. But what you may not know is, in fact, a lot of the countries that you think might compensate it for it also don't have very high fertility. So, for example, Brazil's total fertility rate is 1.7. As you all know, the requirement for replacement of population is 2.1. So if it's 1.7, eventually your population will start to decline. India is only at 2.2. Thailand is at 1.5. And so the reality is right now, if you look at the globe, the world as a total, the number of working age adults outside of sub-Saharan Africa has already peaked. The number of children outside of sub-Saharan Africa has already peaked. And this first slide just takes a look at it and look in terms of the number of births that are going on now. So the first two bars, this is in 5-year increments, but the first two bars show the number of births in Africa versus the whole rest of the world combined. And you can see, of course, the light orange bar on the right-hand side, the light orange part of the bar is all of Asia. So it includes India, China, etc. And you can already see that as we sit here today, the number of births in Africa is already more than half of the number of births in Asia. In the period from 2030 to 2035, the number of births in Africa is more than half of the rest of the world. And when you get out a little bit further, because of course the declining number of women of childbearing age in other countries around the world, the number of births in Africa, in fact, is not too far off the number of births in the entire rest of the world. And you might think this is sort of an arcane something in the future, but actually these demographic realities really unfold very fast. So if there are, to put 40 million births in Africa this year, it means in 20 years, when you start to be economically productive, there'll be 40 million Africans. In that same year, this year, there's 5 million births in Europe, which means that there's only going to be 5 million economically active 20-year-olds in 20 years from now. And I mean, I think, many, of course, at my age, I may not be around, but many of the people, I hope all of the people on the webinar today are still going to be very active in 2040. So this is happening so fast on this. And as I said, this is already out of date because the UN, this doesn't take account of what the UN just announced 2 weeks ago. Next slide, Toyin. So if we just look at a few countries, I mean, Toyin's based in the United States. So you look at Nigeria, and again, this is expressed in 5-year increments. So let me translate it into this year. This year, there'll be more than 7 million births in Nigeria. And I believe in the United States, there'll be less than 3 million births, which again means in 20 years, there'll be 7 million economically active Nigerians and 3 million Americans. And of course, America has some immigration, but we've seen that fall down. And you can see how rapidly Nigeria is increasing its population. And of course, the number of births in China, the number of births in India is actually starting to fall pretty fast out of this. But even in countries, as I said before, that you may think of as fast growing, like Indonesia, the numbers falling. In Brazil, the number of births is falling. So this economic tilt, I mean, it means it has a few implications. I mean, one of the implications is that to expect companies to be able to grow in markets where population is shrinking is not realistic. So if you take Europe as a whole, there's no question that we're going to have growth rates. If we achieve 1% growth rate, that would be extraordinary, because how do you get GDP growth? You get as a combination of the number of people participating in the economy times the productivity, right? So if the number of people participating in the economy is declining because the working age population is declining, that headwind has to be offset by productivity. And productivity, it's hard to see it increasing more than 1% per year. So if you're a company that wants growth, there really are no new markets in Europe, China, India. You might get some growth as they increase productivity. But the only market that's really going to be exploding is Africa. And just a final comment on this slide. Part of that UN report, I mean, many people on this call would have known that it's projected in 2045 that Nigeria would have a greater population than the United States. But in fact, this report came out and said this century, Nigeria will become the second most populous nation on the planet. It will surpass China. Which is extraordinary, because if you look at the map, and Nigeria is not a small country, but it's not a huge country physically, occupying one corner of what's an immense continent. Next slide, please. So then it's just translating this into where we're going. In 2050, you can see the top bar of each of the three just shows, again, Asia is only about twice as big as Africa. Africa is bigger than, I think, North America, and Europe sort of put together by a long range, and that's where the new market's going to be. Next slide. And then looking again by country, I mean, this shows Nigeria past the United States has not been updated for what I just mentioned, which is, of course, that Nigeria is likely to pass China in this by the end of the century on there. So that's all the slides I brought. I just thought this demographic story, we talk about it sometimes, but it's not really realized. But let me dive in a little bit about where I see the African economy right now, why the opportunities are so enormous on there. And I think one of the problems that's happening right now in Africa is that when we look at the headline GDP growth numbers, if we go pre-COVID, it was about 3% per year, which doesn't sound very good and really isn't very good. But the reason for this, because the population growth is close to 3%, but the reason for this was, if you disaggregate sub-Saharan Africa, what you find, in fact, is that you have the two largest economies doing very poorly. So we have South Africa, which for its own historical reasons is really struggling. And we also have my home, which is a great pain to me as an economist in the country. I'm sorry, do you want me to Toyin, I'm happy to put on my camera if people want to see me if I speak. But
nice. I want to see your face if you're fine with that.
see if it's
okay. You twist your phone. Turn your phone.
is that working?
Yeah, you're on. You need to turn your phone.
Oh, but that requires a whole. But then it has
nice,
to be.
nice. Now it's perfect. Thank you. I want to see your face.
All right. So as I said, what people look from outside and maybe not seeing this Africa story quite, or the demographic story, because when they look at the headline number, which is how we all think about this headline GDP, we see 3%. But what's going on, as I said, is South Africa is doing very poorly. In my own home, Nigeria is doing very poorly. And what the 3% mask is how many bright spots there are on the continent. So if we look at Senegal, we look at Cote d'Ivoire, we've already discussed Rwanda, Botswana, Kenya, Ethiopia is doing fantastically well. So actually, in each year, you get more and more of these places that are doing well. And you've got in many of these places a virtuous circle. So you have economic results, you have better governance, you have more transparency and accountability demanded by the population, which feeds into better public services, less corruption, more transparency. And one of the countries, perhaps the most advanced, where you can see this in addition to Rwanda, but is Ghana, which is a neighbor of Nigeria. And it's really extraordinary. I mean, I went to Ghana the first time in 1988. Or 87, I think. And it was a very difficult time in Ghana under President Rawlings, Captain Rawlings. Gold price was low, but now Ghana is just doing incredibly well. And it's very good on a security viewpoint, on a governance viewpoint, on the ability of the public sector to deliver things that are required, to its embracing of free market principles in the right way that's appropriate. So there are all these bright spots. As I said, I've listed out 10 bright spots on that. So when you look at the headline number of 3%, you say, no, this is not doing very well. It's growing 3% of population, but the GDP is not growing. But actually, 10 bright spots means we're about to start, just continue this momentum throughout the continent, and hopefully it will spread to Nigeria as well, because then you'll really see the headline numbers at an aggregate level take off. So why is that important for all of us here today, particularly people kind of based in the United States? I mean, to begin with, I think it's fair to say that there is not enough engagement between the United States and Africa, just in terms of a business. And this may be true for all parts of the world, but particularly given the United States is still the world's largest economy and has many of the world's leading companies. There needs to be more engagement with this immense emerging market and immense population. And of course, obviously in Africa, we want to have a greater capability to produce things ourselves. So we want to produce electricity, we want to have better manufacturing, etc. But to do those things, as Toyin said, we still need to import things that we can't. We're not going to make computers anytime soon. We're not going to make cell phones. We're not going to make advanced machinery that are required for manufacturing. So we still need a significant amount and more of these imports to help build up our economies here. And I think that's where the American companies in particular need to play a key role, and are currently certainly in Nigeria kind of underrepresented on that, because I mean the American companies bring standards, they bring transparency, they don't participate in some of the practices that other nations doing business in Africa do that contribute to ongoing problems in it. They're very committed to financial transparency. So I think when you take the kind of totality of the American business interest in Africa at this time, we would really like to see American companies step up and play a bigger role. Now, a big part of this too is the role of the diaspora for many reasons. I mean, one reason quite simply is that the diaspora, certainly in Nigeria, is holding up the economy. So, we have a large number of upper middle class professionals that emigrate out of Nigeria. They settle in Canada, they settle in the UK, they settle in the United States, and they remit a very large amount of money, we actually wrote a paper last year because I got tired of hearing that Nigeria was an oil economy. We just showed that, in fact, what's holding up the economy is the diaspora. So critical. But then people sometimes say, well, the diaspora is a brain drain. And I guess we look at it a little bit differently and say the diaspora is the biggest asset that Nigeria and Africa has, because that connects Africa to the rest of the world. And of course, certainly the Nigerian diaspora has been immensely successful. I mean, it's amazing as a relatively new diaspora in the United States. The average American of Nigerian heritage has a higher income than the average American, which is an extraordinary feat and a testament to the capabilities and the interest in education of Nigerians and Africans in general. But the diaspora plays a key role in bridging all of this, because they are the ones that can help America play a bigger role in sub-Saharan Africa, and they play a role in increasing the African brand throughout the United States and with African companies and in American communities. And that, I mean, if we take Nigeria, my home, of course, and it has a negative perception around the world. But when you work with a professional colleague who's from Nigeria, that's now how that perception gets altered, and you start to understand that Nigeria and Africa has so much to alter. So in building up these business ties between the United States and Africa, the diaspora has a key role, and the governments back in Africa have a key role in nurturing the diaspora and creating the opportunities to connect together with the diaspora and what they can bring to the country, and establishing new businesses and new trade routes and new investment routes on that. So just standing back, from my section, I think just these are the key messages I would like to leave you with. I mean, we've just shown from a demographic perspective, the weight is moving so rapidly to Africa. It is not recognized sufficiently how major this change is, and it means that businesses that want to grow, the biggest growth markets on the planet, are rapidly becoming African. Of course, they have big populations. Nigeria is 200 million, going on to a very big number. Ethiopia is 100 million. Kenya is 50 million. South Africa is 50 million. Tanzania is growing very rapidly. So these are not small population countries with small opportunities. They have immense opportunities for people that can figure out how to connect to Africa. But at the same time, Africa needs engagement from the United States, needs from everywhere, but particularly, I think, at this stage from where I sit, from the United States, because of the United States' role in the economy, its role in standards, as I said, and we need more attention from the United States. But the other aspect of this that's so critical is the alternative. So, I've just given a narrative about Africa's population, demographic weight, Africa rising story. The alternative to Africa becoming prosperous is really something that's almost unthinkable. I mean, if you have, for example, a failed state in Nigeria because we continue to have poverty and economic stress and violence around from various sources around the country, a failed Nigeria would be a catastrophe, not just for Nigeria and Africa, but for Europe, but also for the United States on that. And I think that it's everyone on the planet has an extremely strong interest in a prosperous and stable Africa. And to that extent, people need to play a role in helping it develop. And this role is not aid. Africa is past the aid situation. And, I've never been a big fan of the impact of aid in Africa sitting where I sit. What Africa needs is develop a stronger and stronger private sector in every country, in every industry. It already has vibrant NGOs. It has vibrant civic organizations on that. If we can complement it with a private sector, as I always say in Nigeria, that's 10 to 15 times bigger than we currently have, then we'll be on our path. But the other implication of all this is, when I say 10 to 15 times bigger in a decade, it means there's immense opportunities for people who build it, despite all the challenges we see in Africa. For those who are able to build a proper business in Africa, in any African country, I mean, they're going to build something large on a big scale, something very, very material. So I think those opportunities, there aren't a lot of them around the world, but they're there in Africa on that. And then the final thing I'll just say today, among the American, I obviously have many American company friends in Nigeria, but I wanted to give a big shout out to Google in West Africa, which is run by an extraordinary Nigerian woman, Juliet. and who's just, basically one of the African technology, well, not just technology, absolutely superstars in Africa. But I think she also holds American citizenship on that. But it's great to see Google in West Africa and what they're doing. And one of the things that just shows you how far Africa's coming is, I mean, this is not just a question of Google having a presence, but they're building out development centers in Nigeria, in Lagos, because they recognize the amount of talent that is available in the market. Of course, the low cost the programmers have, developers, engineers currently have on there, but it's a great success story of an American company. And, obviously it's one of the mega companies, but I think there's many more success stories for American companies coming at every scale, every size in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. So let me stop there and say, thank you to Toyin for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be part of this. She's made more efforts than anyone I know in the last 5 years to connect Africa to the United States. It'll be interesting to see. Susan Rice, of course, was at McKinsey in Toronto when I was there. She was a friend of mine. It'll be remarkable to see if Susan became vice president, to then kind of see the connectivity between, because of course she has great interest in Africa. But regardless of what happens politically in the United States, I'd like to see more engagement. We need to see more engagement between the United States and sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's amazing. So I already see some questions for you. So just to guide people, let's use the Q&A. Right below you see the Q&A section. Let's keep questions there, and then let's use this chat room to stay, to continue networking. So I have a question, Dr. Andrew. From a private sector standpoint in the US, there's this, when it comes to, let's say, stock market, let's even go back to basics. There are still so many people that do not even understand that there are sophisticated stock and stuff happening on the continent. Like, what would you like to say to those people in terms of economic activities happening from a commercial standpoint in terms of a stock?
Well, I think that, it's a good point you make. I think one of the things we suffer from in Africa, quite frankly, is you go back to the aid agencies. A lot of people are projecting negative images about Africa and sort of rural poverty and I'll use the term poverty porn in there. And that sort of negates kind of what's happening around the continent. And I think that Africa needs to make more of an effort to come out and tell their story. Obviously, there's many sophisticated urban centers around the continent, and the truth is, if we're honest, if you just think about expatriates for a moment, where do expatriates want to be? They want to be in Addis Ababa, they want to be in Nairobi, they want to be in Cape Town. Many kind of attractive places with a real buzz, and this buzz is across many dimensions. So, in Lagos we have the tech buzz, and we're starting to get more and more connectivity between Silicon Valley and Nigeria, and I don't know. I think E's on the show, right? So everyone here, when you have this, so E is so famous. His name has been reduced to a single letter on that. But he's a remarkable young Nigerian, the founder of both, co-founder of Andela and Flutterwave, both Silicon Valley supported companies that have been successful technology companies in Africa. And it just shows you, for investors, for example, these VC investors that have taken the time and had the courage to take a look at Africa, there's lots of things that are possible out there. I guess what I would say to American, larger American companies, not everyone needs to, but certainly I think large companies in the United States, need to just invest some time in Africa. And that doesn't necessarily involve a lot of money at this stage. That requires careful analysis, but it does involve getting people to go on the visits, go have a look around, including the CEO. I think one thing that's really helped PwC, for example, not that we're an American company, but our largest footprint is the United States. But we've had the global head of PwC out to Africa a number of times, and it really makes a difference to make those visits and then come away with a different impression. Certainly, I think people that go to Nairobi, people that go to Accra, people that go to Abidjan, Dakar, Addis Ababa come with a very positive impression. People that go to Lagos, little bit more difficult for those familiar with Nigeria, but they all come away with recognizing the energy level, the level of entrepreneurship on that. So out of that you start to get the ideas of how to participate on it. So more connectivity, but at the same time, as I said, I do think that the African governments at this stage need to make more of an effort to tell a different narrative. I mean, if you take the Rwanda story for a moment, I mean, there are some mixed views on the kind of political system in Rwanda, but let's put those aside for a moment. In terms of the raw numbers of things that people look at, Rwanda is extraordinary. And if you take something like ease of doing business, I think the last number I saw is 29th. So 29th, that would rank ahead of Spain, Germany, Italy. It may rank ahead of Canada. I can't remember on that. But, it's an extraordinary accomplishment from a place that had such a horrific civil war 26 years ago. So I think Africa needs to get better at telling these stories. I think the other thing that's hampered Africa to a large extent is a lack of unity in Africa working together. But I think that's changing. You can really see now a kind of new sense of Pan-Africanism. The African Union has done a great job. People are behind the AFCFTA, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which again will spur economic opportunities for people outside of and Americans as well. So telling that story and increasing integration in Africa are just going to create more and more opportunities for those inside Africa and outside.
Fantastic. Wow. You're popular, Dr. Nevin. We have some questions here for you. Okay. Sam Lombardo says, Dr. Nevin, where do you see special economic zones fitting into Africa's development?
Yeah, so I mean, I have to say I've never been a massive fan of inland economic zone. Sorry, if we mean by an economic zone, special tax breaks and concessions, I've never been a huge fan of those inland. I mean, I can understand there should be like that at the port. So if you import, well, not import, bring it into a special economic zone, do some processing and re-export to a neighboring country, I think that can be beneficial. So I'm not in favor of creating, in the Nigerian context, for example, multiple special economic zones with tax breaks and concessions. What I am in favor of is creating industrial parks that specialize in certain things so that they can, build up the ecosystem. So, for example, in Edo State in Nigeria, Benin City, the governor there is building out kind of agro processing park. So it'll have electricity, it'll have there's security, obviously, stable power, stable infrastructure, bandwidth, productivity, and then you get many agro processors, so tomatoes and other vegetables, and all kind of agglomerated to create more of an ecosystem. And I'm a big fan of that. But one of the things that's really hampered certainly Nigeria is too many concessionary tax deals, and it creates a complexity on that. I don't think that the business people need concessions on taxes. What they need is a growing economy, a stable environment on that.
Okay, thank you. Adewale Dada said, there's an impression that EU companies have deeper commercial ties with the continent. How can European and North American based companies work together to broaden those ties?
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. So I have to certainly in Nigeria, if you looked at it overall, the European companies are more active. So you have Heineken, you have Unilever, for example, on that. And in Nigeria, we've just formed something called the European EBO, which is not IGBO, but the European Business Organization, which is grouping together the large European companies to influence policy. And collectively, it's bigger than the sort of U.S. Chamber of Commerce that way. So I mean, I think to some extent, it's just historic because of better or worse colonial ties. So to some extent, it's just time zone difference and flight difference. So I mean, if you're in Lagos, you have 5-6 flights a day overnight to Europe. You have one flight to Atlanta on that, so that the ties are deeper with Europe. So that's something. But as I said, just given what's happening with the demographics, it's something that Americans need to make a conscious effort to overcome and just make a commitment to be there. Talked about with Google. I mean, GE also, an American company that's made a big commitment to Nigeria, though, to be honest, because of some of their problems globally, they haven't been able to be as aggressive as they wanted. So I think there's lots of opportunity. But if I look at it, if I name and just not choosing it for any particular reason, but I'd say one company that comes to mind that should be in Africa that I don't see, and maybe I'm wrong, is a company like Cargill. So you look at kind of perhaps the world's largest agricultural company at all points of the agricultural value chain. So in Nigeria, we've got Olam. There across West Africa, we have Olam very active, but Cargill Olam's a big company, but Cargill is a behemoth. So those sorts of American companies we'd like to see more active. I mean, if we look at the electricity, so go back to GE for a moment. The government in Nigeria has just signed with Siemens and not with GE, and I'm sure Siemens will do a good job, but I think American companies also need to be at the table.
Right. Well, so one of the things that I also try to get people to see is you can decide to export from America, for example, export probably machine equipment that would help galvanize development on the continent. But we also have a case for actually bringing manufacturing to Africa with the population growth that is going to explode. What is there anything you want to share around that area? Because right now, most companies in America want short-term benefits, which is fine. They just want to export today. But when you start looking at the graphs you showed us about the growth in terms of 30, 40 years, what would you say to CEOs in America today in terms of how do they build that strategy, not for them to just think about short-term wins, but growing with the continent?
Well, I think, you're exactly right. If you look at the demographics and you ask the question, who's actually going to be the workers in factories? And of course, automation would worry that there won't be any workers, but at the end of the day, there still needs to be some people there. And I think that if you go back to kind of the Asian story, I think obviously China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, has done very well in textiles and growing their economy a lot. And they have many challenges, but incomes have risen a lot there. So, but those places have in effect less and less people, right? So I think Governor Sanusi, of course, is the Emir of who was suspended as governor and pushed out as Emir of Kano, which we could have a long discussion about, but has always been perhaps the most prescient thinker about the economy in Nigeria and Africa. It's very clear. It says the workshops of the world have to rotate from China to Africa. So then if you're an American CEO, I guess my message would be, it's far enough along, certainly in some places, to come and try it out. I mean, you can come to Ghana and set up something small and start to explore it in 2 or 3 years, set something up. I mean, they have a stable electricity supply that they manage well, relatively low cost because a lot of it is hydroelectric. And just the way, if you had said to people 40 years ago, you'd be manufacturing in Vietnam or Bangladesh, I think American CEOs might have been skeptical, but now these are massive manufacturing bases. So why not invest some effort now to be looking at not 40 years, but where is manufacturing going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now? The population to take that on is in Africa, and also they have large internal markets. So I don't think there's anything wrong with starting to investigate and possibly laying down a chip in some of these countries, perhaps not Nigeria, because we still have challenges around infrastructure and power and ease of doing business at the moment. But there are lots of other places in Africa where I think the time has come to really investigate. Can you start up that manufacturing value chain? And Ethiopia comes to mind as well, and certainly some of the Tanzania or Kenya.
Fantastic. So I'll try to take one last question. There's one last question I want to pass to you before we move on to the next speaker. And so Hala King says, I see you're speaking about large companies entering agriculture, but how does this address the supply chain issues experienced by small, older farmers? How does the increase in oligopolies, I don't think I said that well, improve the supply chain issues we see in agriculture in Africa? So basically, with PwC, your firm works really with the biggest players in the world. But when it comes to the opportunities in small, medium-sized companies, whether in the US or back in Africa, being able to connect the dots, I think we have a huge untapped opportunity in that space. So I think his question is around from a small older farmer and the SMEs, how do we start creating opportunities for them?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. And I mean, I think, I was doing another event earlier today, and there always this question comes up about SMEs, and there's so many SMEs in Africa, and it's such a high percentage of employment and the economy. And our view has always been, yes, we should be supportive of SMEs, but to us, the anchor is a little bit the bigger companies, to be honest, that we need, to create the ecosystem I'm sorry, my dear friend, the name escapes me, from Rwanda, our friend who's doing the Rwanda coffee. Sorry?
Scott Ford.
Scott, yeah, sorry, Scott. Yeah, you get stressed when you're speaking. But Scott made the point, he was very appreciative of having Walmart as a client, to have Omni Hotels, I think, as a client for coffee. And I think it just illustrates that, as a small company, in many, many cases, you need to get involved in an ecosystem that has a large anchor, right, on that. And so if we take Olam, for example, in Nigeria, or even Dangote Rice, they have the model of they put together 5,000 hectares in an area, grow rice, and then they have the outgrower program. So all the farmers around who are also growing rice, they provide the extension, they'll often provide the inputs, et cetera. And help them de-risk. Now, obviously, that arrangement can sometimes not, it needs to be beneficial to the farmers who are taking all the risk on that. But I think you need to have the big players doing some of that de-risking, because it's very risky just to be a small or medium-sized player in some of these value chains, particularly in agriculture. But that said, I still think the opportunities are immense, particularly maybe for medium-sized companies. So someone that can process tomatoes. We lose 50% of our tomatoes in Nigeria on that. But to know that you have off-takers. So for example, if you're going to do sorghum in Nigeria, to know that Heineken breweries, not Nigeria breweries, and brew Heineken is going to be your off-taker. You know that there's a fair way to set the price. I mean, that is kind of the anchor to be able to grow agriculture and agricultural processing. Sometimes I worry that in Nigeria we're heading into kind of this just massive push for agriculture without really thinking through the structure or the risk. I mean, being the farmer is a very risky proposition. You have to put all your inputs up front. You then have lots of risk around weather and output and how much yield you get. You then have lots of risk around price. You have lots of risk around physical transportation on that. So you need some bigger players in that system to be able to create the environment where the farmers can do well for themselves.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Andrew. I mean, if you were here in person, we'll all be clapping for you. So here's my clap. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And like I said, this is a journey, and thank you for being a part of this journey with us.
No, it's a great honor for me to be part of it, Toyin, and to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, on that note, our next speaker is also from Lagos, Nigeria, Dr. Adeni Oshamlui, and he leads healthcare, when it comes to healthcare on the continent. He has the largest database of medical doctor, and he's one of the key leaders that works with like WHO and the governments there. So Dr. Nee, is such an honor. You've been a part of this journey from day one, and thank you so much for helping us to anchor. When it comes to healthcare, you always bring to us a whole lot of information. And this year with COVID-19, your area is really the hot topic. So please let's welcome Dr. Nee as the next speaker.
Thank you, Toyin, for having me once again. It's exciting to be on this platform once again. Like Andrew, I don't have too many slides, but I'm going to share what I've got here. Okay, it appears screen sharing is not enabled for me.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me see what I can do. Just keep talking.
Okay, all right. So first things first, let me introduce myself. Tony has done a fair job of introducing me. My name is Dr. Niyo Shamili, medical doctor, but most of my work in the last 15 years has been in digital health, leveraging technology to increase access to quality care in Nigeria and across Africa. So we founded a company called Premier Medical Systems about 11 years ago. One of the Premier Medical System then went on to build DockyLink, which is a community of doctors. I'll come to that later. But again, the topic, what I'm supposed to be talking about, and what indeed I will try to talk about, is talking about healthcare in Africa. It's difficult right now to talk about healthcare and indeed almost anything without talking about COVID. So talking about healthcare in the context of COVID across Africa, I think a good thing, first of all, is to try to say, what was the landscape like pre-COVID? So before COVID came to Africa, or before we had the first case of COVID in Africa, what were the issues? What were the conversations around? So key conversations in Africa before COVID came was universal health coverage. The conversation was, how can everyone be able to access care, be able to walk into an hospital? How can we remove the inequities in healthcare? That was a key conversation in Africa, universal health coverage. Another key conversation was the gaps in healthcare funding. That was well documented. What resources, what funding was government committing to healthcare? And that led to calls for involvement, because of course there were huge gaps, or there are huge gaps in funding of healthcare. That led to calls for bringing in the private sector to support the funding of healthcare, because it was realized, even though governments gathered in Abuja in 2001, which is called the Abuja Declaration, and said 15% of our budgets should be for healthcare. And we found in Nigeria, for example, budget is around 5%. Budget for healthcare is around 5% of the whole budget. So clear gaps in funding of healthcare, and that made call for that made it important to bring the private sector. So we now talked about PPPs. So PPPs was a conversation in healthcare across Africa, from Kenya to South Africa, and indeed Nigeria, for private sector to help to be involved in infrastructure, equipment, etc. Another key conversation in Africa was communicable diseases. That has always been an issue in Africa. Communicable diseases like malaria, like tuberculosis, like HIV. Those were things, conversations around in Africa. But beyond just saying communicable disease, another conversation that was key in Africa was we were beginning to see an increase in non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases like diabetes, non-communicable diseases like hypertension, cancers, they appeared. And indeed, they were increasing. The incidence was increasing in Africa. So that was also a major conversation. Studies found that this might not be unconnected with changes in lifestyle, the food that we eat and things like that, rural, urban migration and things like that. So that was also a key conversation, and saying that the disease burden in Africa, when you talk about non-communicable diseases, was going up. Another key conversation was in terms of shortage of healthcare workers. So you had Africa with just about 1.3, 1.4% of healthcare workers globally, saddled with 25% of disease burden. So these were conversations that were going on around Africa, and that was what pretty much pre-COVID. But again, one key positive that I think we've has been examined as part of the experiences that we had in Africa that may have contributed, or that may indeed be contributing to how we are coping. Okay, so that can be a subject of argument about how well Africa is doing in terms of COVID. But again, Africa entered the COVID era, so to speak, with an experience in managing Ebola. So we had Ebola in outbreaks in Congo, in various parts of Central Africa, and indeed we had also had Ebola, although there was just one case in Nigeria. And so Africa entered, if you like to use that word, or COVID entered Africa, with Africa having some experience in terms of managing outbreaks, Ebola outbreaks. So COVID came. First case diagnosed in Africa, Egypt, 14th of February. And after that, Nigeria, where I live and where I am speaking from, 27th of February, just about 2 weeks later, the first case was diagnosed. And but today we're talking about across Africa over 800,000 cases across Africa. Today we're talking about over 15,000 deaths across Africa. So COVID came with the background in terms of the health systems and things like that. COVID came and led in a way to disruption of provision of healthcare services. COVID came and led to disruption in terms of healthcare utilization. And so there are ways that I feel, yes, and I will highlight one or two that COVID may have brought out, if you like, the best in us. But again, without a doubt, COVID led to disruptions. First of all, facilities, centers, some centers were dedicated to as COVID centers. So again, people couldn't access care in those centers. Beyond that, healthcare workers themselves, there was reallocation of resources. So some healthcare workers had to be dedicated as COVID warriors, as frontline healthcare workers for COVID. So again, beyond that, because of the lack of PPEs and other necessary infection prevention equipment or materials, at times doctors were reluctant to see patients, and you can't, of course, blame them, because if you can't protect, if you don't have the adequate materials and things as little as face masks, surgical face masks, and things like that, how would you be able to see patients? So there was disruption in supply chain, and these were things that happened that were caused by COVID. But something that I describe, you may look at it maybe as an advantage, I don't know, but because when COVID came, borders were closed, there were flight restrictions, there were events were cancelled, etc., like that. We found that normally people so medical tourism, even for cases that potentially could be handled within the country, was very, very common. Within the continent was very common. So COVID led to people trying to look inwards to say, how can we access care locally? So I've always felt there's an imbalance. So across the continent, we talk about shortage of doctors and things like that. That is true. That is clear. However, you find that even at times, the doctors, the specialists that are available, that are on ground, there's low capacity utilization, and this is not often highlighted. So you find out that even for specialists, they don't see as many patients as they should. But because, of course, restrictions in travel, international travel has been cancelled, at least in the meantime, people had to seek care locally. And again, that also led to hospitals investing in infrastructure, because, of course, they were able to see more people and things like that. So those are part of the things that of course, again, government, they had no choice. With the support of the private sector, they had no choice to, although again, you can look at it as an emergency response, but again, they had no choice with the support of the private sector to make healthcare a priority. So people talk about the post-COVID era. Talk about the post-COVID era. I when you look at the way things are, I keep wondering, will we have a post-COVID era? I think we should talk about the flattening of the curve. Maybe we should talk about when a vaccine is found. I think it is too early to talk about a post-COVID era, because again, you look at in a lot of countries, local flights have been are now being allowed, right? But you will observe that, and when you interact with people, the attitude of people has changed in terms of air travel. Not everybody is as keen to travel. So, and this cuts across various sectors. So I think it's important when we have these conversations, should we, so it's people talk about the new normal. I think new normal is better than when we talk about post-COVID. We don't know how long that will be for. So another, if you like, good thing, and this is something that is close to my heart, it's the domain where I work, because of course there were disruptions in healthcare delivery across the world. That led to people turning to telemedicine, people turning to alternative ways of accessing care, doctors turning to alternative ways of delivering care. So telemedicine could be just picking up the phone, a phone call. So I knew COVID again pushed even people that were traditionally slow when it comes to embracing innovation, such as I knew public hospitals that issued phone numbers and said people, whether this was driven by the management or driven by the doctors, I knew public hospitals that issued phone numbers and said if you wanted to contact them, you didn't have to come. So as it doesn't have to be techie, you're going, whether it's AI or stuff and things like that before it's telemedicine. So as little as low-level stuff like that, phone numbers were provided, and patients that had their surgery cancelled, they had their follow-up cancelled, so appointments were cancelled. People that had surgeries that were supposed to have follow-up care, they couldn't in the hospital. So telemedicine came in. So again, we may begin to argue about to what extent as telemedicine, as COVID led to the adoption of telemedicine. Without a doubt, there is greater adoption. But if we want to play with numbers, we can say there has been 500% increase. But again, because if you have from 1 to 5, it's 500% increase. So what I'm actually saying is that yes, there's been an increase, but it's not where we should be. For example, I was reading, I think Teladoc in the US had about 2.5 million virtual consults in the last quarter. So in Africa, yes, there's an increase, but if we want to make things sound exciting, we'll tell you there has been 500%. Yes, it could be 500%, but again, in absolute, a lot of frictions, a lot of barriers, a lot of challenges. On the consumer side, confidence, again, link it back to universal health coverage, because most consumers have to pay out of pocket, so affordability is an issue and things like that. But again, with time, there's been progress, and potentially those frictions, those challenges will be surmounted. Finally, a little bit more about the work that I do. So I run DocuLink. DocuLink started pretty much, it came from a problem that I had myself practicing as a medical doctor a couple of years back. So DocuLink essentially connecting doctors. But we've grown in terms of our doctors on the platform. Most of our work right now, beyond the connecting of doctors and the communication and the exchanges between doctors, is connecting consumers to doctors. And I usually like to highlight, so there are telemedicine platforms that do a lot of things like primary care across Africa. But DocuLink is more of specialist care. So if you're looking for a dermatologist, and dermatology is an area that we have actually seen an increase in people trying to connect with doctors, both virtually and hospital visits. So we've seen a lot of people trying to connect with dermatologists on our platform, having virtual consults. We've also seen with other specialties, whether it's the cardiologist, endocrinologist, but we've seen a lot, I think, probably because of the, in quote, visual nature of dermatology. Maybe that has seen a lot of consumers embracing this. So we play mainly trying because we have quite a few specialists, whether it's neurosurgeons, neurologists, and things like that, specialists on our platform, and we connect them with consumers. So I'll stop here. I'm happy to take having me here. We hope next year, God's grace, we will be able to share absolute numbers, exciting absolute numbers, and not just averages or percentages. But definitely, there's progress in terms of adoption of technology and telemedicine across Africa. Thank you once again, Tony.
Oh, Dr. Nee, thank you so much. We do have a question for you, but before then, I also want to ask if I should make you a host to share your slides, or should we just send your slides out to the attendees? Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, so pretty much, like I had like maybe 3 or 4 slides. I've really spoken to much more, most of what I have. So I think for anyone listening, I've shared pretty much what was on the slides. Thank you.
Yes, one thing we would also like to call out here is that from a contact, because you're speaking now, many people may want to connect with you or DocuLink. Please, if you're on the platform, Dr. Nee is actually on the platform. If you have specific business opportunities that you want to explore in the healthcare space, do check out his information. You can DM him, or also if you're on Zoom, please do reach out. But we do have a question from Dr. Femi Oshidele. He says, Dr. Nee, I appreciate you mentioning the emergencies that COVID has revealed across the continent. Could you expand on strategies for leveraging these opportunities to advance healthcare throughout Africa?
So, like I said, first of all, so there's no longer a hiding place. The former honorable minister about that in meetings, when you're in the cabinet meetings, you are trying to justify why healthcare should be funded. So you're the minister of health. You say there's a reason why people should be funded for why healthcare, why your ministry should be funded. So you have the minister of finance, minister for housing, minister for works, etc., all trying to justify. So when he says yes, healthcare, people say yes. When they make roads, people are also, they get to hospitals on time and things like that. So it was at times difficult because people say, okay, this Ministry of Environment also has to be funded because environment is also about your health and things like that. But I think with COVID, healthcare is now in the front burner. And I think that's something that is key. There's no hiding place for governments. They realize in terms of the weaknesses in the health system, and they realize they need to fund healthcare, the healthcare sector. That's one in terms of government, funding for government. Again, I think across Africa, COVID again has provided opportunities in terms of the private sector. They see opportunities. For example, I think last week there was a commissioning of a face mask producing factory. So the business case has always been there, but I think it's now more obvious in terms of investing in healthcare, attracting funding to healthcare, in terms of we can't depend pretty much on Asia for equipment, for consumables. We've seen what can happen. So there's greater business cases, or more. It's easier in quotes to attract funding for healthcare. Also, government hospitals. Pre-COVID, yes, that was the case, but again, it appears to be increasing in terms of PPPs. Hospitals, even government hospitals, partnering with private sector, whereby their labs, whether it's their CT scan, they don't have a CT scan, the private sector is bringing in the CT scan, the private sector is bringing the MRI, and the government, the public hospital brings the patients. Of course, they have got the patient, but of course, they weren't providing care as well as they should. So the private sector comes, and you have many examples of this across the continent. So those are ways, I think, which then of course technology, which is the area that I play. There's a lot of interest. A lot of technology startups are attracting funding in terms of what they are doing, in terms of electronic medical records, in terms of all the things that. So pretty much summary, COVID has brought the spotlight. It's not. It probably wasn't the best way for this to happen, but without a doubt, COVID has brought the spotlight on health, and it's relatively easier to attract funding and for healthcare projects across Africa. Thank you.
Wow. So I want to one last question, but it's going to come from me, from an investor. So if an investor is looking at healthcare across Africa, they might be thinking, oh, can Africans afford, can Africans afford it? Should we build that hospital? Should we bring those equipment? Should we bring this sophisticated solution to Africa? If they were asking you that question, sir, what would your answer be?
Okay, so it's interesting that, so this again, I will go back to something that was said by someone said, I think it's the head of NSCIA for Nigeria, and I don't remember his name right now. They invested in a cancer center in Nigeria, and this was something that he said to governments. Government was like, they are investing, they're partnering with a public hospital to build, I think, the largest cancer. They've already, that center has been built now, has been commissioned. They built the largest cancer center in West Africa. And part of the question that they were asked by government, by the leadership was, will people be able to afford this? And he practically told them, as government, that is your business. You need to fix universal health coverage, make healthcare accessible to all people. However, beyond making it accessible, available to everybody, there are also people right now that are going, for example, in Nigeria, going to Ghana, going to Asia, India, to access some of this care. So there's a business case for it. You need to invest in this infrastructure. You need to invest in this equipment, make it available. One, there are people already going outside that can afford it, that because it is not readily available, they're going outside the country to be able to access this care. In terms of people that are below the poverty line, it is you, the government, so that was how we had the conversation. You need to fix those frictions. You need to, universal health coverage shouldn't is not negotiable. We've been stuck on 5% in Nigeria for a while. So those are things that need to practically be solved. So to summarize, yes, ability to pay is there, and investment has to flow into those spaces and those critical healthcare infrastructure. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much. I know we could go on and on, even just this topic by itself. I know there will be questions around, people that might want to reach you. Again, we'll put the information of our speakers out there. If you go to our website, their information is out there. Like I said, if you're just joining us, this is how I started the event, to say each of our speakers are people I consider gatekeepers, and they have keys to the cities, and they are key stakeholders in advancing investments and trade across the continent. So if you're interested in healthcare, for sure, he can help drive that. So thank you so much. We're staying on time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're giving you the virtual clap.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
Have a good one.
Thank you. So we're moving on. It's 9:30 right now in Central Time, and I know it's getting later in the rest of the world. Again, we're working on various time zones. We have speakers from Morocco. We've had 2 speakers from Lagos. Now we're shifting to Cairo, Egypt, where we're having representation from the African Export-Import Bank, one of our key sponsors. They were a sponsor last year, and we're so happy to feature them and to also feature the Intra-African Trade Fair. And this is amazing that they are able to bring us this information, because from where we sit, for example, we talk a lot about trade with Africa. But the interesting thing is that the activities happening on ground is not immediately visible to Western investors that might be looking to see what commercial activities are happening. And the African Export-Import Bank and the Intra-African Trade Fair is a window of opportunity of penetrating the African market. So I'm so happy to bring representative of the bank right now. And so please, you have the floor. Just let me know. I'll make you a host if you're having issues with your slides. Please go on.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayman El-Zobi. I'm the Senior Manager for the Intra-African Trade and Corporate Finance at African Export-Import Bank. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's really our pleasure to be participating in this event. As you rightly said, this is the second time that we participate, and we really appreciate the opportunity. We appreciate the opportunity to support this big event, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak out and say what Afreximbank is doing, and even claim our rights to declare the kind of things that we contribute to the continent. So I'll go very quickly for all of those on the webinar who does not know much about Afreximbank. I'll go very quickly and give a brief introduction about the bank and what we do and our strategy, and also I'll give an idea about our interventions in the intra-African trade space, whether on the financing side or on the facilitation side. Well, the African Export-Import Bank, we're a multilateral African financial institution that was established in 1994. The main purpose behind establishing the bank is to have a dedicated institution to support trade finance in Africa, intra-African and extra-African trade, in times of crisis, especially in times of crisis. We have right now 51 member African countries of the bank. We have our headquarters in Cairo, Egypt, and we have 4 other branches covering other regions in Africa: East, West, Anglophone and Francophone, South Africa. We're doing a branch to cover Central Africa region, and another one is in the north to cover the Maghreb region. Our strategy is to support intra and extra African trades. The bank 5 years ago took the initiative and said that we need to refocus our direction to more on the promotion of intra-African trade, because this is the way, the regional integration is the way for Africa to develop. We've been, leaning a lot on other continents, but time has come for us to cooperate and work together, and we can do it. We have seen a lot of examples of successful intra-African trade businesses and investments that have contributed a lot to us Africans. So we have a 5-year strategy that hinges around 5 pillars. The main pillar and the arrowhead of our strategy is intra-African trades. And by that we say that we will increase the level of intra-African trade in Africa from its low level of 15 or 16% to something around 22 or 23%. And we do that through financing and facilitation initiatives. The other major important pillar is the export development. We want to focus on export development financing, financing agro-processing zones, like financing industrial parks, bringing value addition to the raw materials in Africa to be exported as manufactured goods. And we do a lot in that space. We've been under this strategy for the past 5 years, and we've supported a lot of African corporates. We've tried to identify key African corporates across Africa that we can call intra-African trade champions, and those are the companies that has the track record, the capacity to do business across Africa, and we've supported them with over $2.5 billion. So far, we've dispersed over $14 billion on intra-African trade business. We have developed a lot of financing instruments, a lot of facilitation initiatives. We're supporting also export trading companies. The way to support relatively smaller industries to export by supporting an export trading company that can assemble all those goods from various producers and export to other African countries. So we're doing a lot in that space, really. We also came up with the Intra-African Trade Fair, which we do biannually. The first one was in Cairo in December 2018. It was very successful. We had over 1,000 exhibitors, more than 7,000 participants, and we've closed transactions and intra-African deals there of over $32 billion. Which was a major success for our first round. The next one will be in Kigali, Rwanda. It was supposed to be this year, but given, of course, the pandemic, we had to postpone it to next year. Hopefully by then the things will have come down to a better shape and be able to hold it successfully once again. So yes, Afreximbank has been there for the major crisis. We've supported the continent at the time of the commodity crisis in 2015 and the FX crisis. We supported a lot of central banks in Africa and financial institutions to give them the right liquidity to support strategic needs. We've also supported the continent now under the pandemic, because we have our pandemic program under which we financed over $4 billion so far to African countries, to central banks, to governments, to corporates, to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. And we continue. We're also supporting the adoption of the AFCFTA, Free Trade Agreement in Africa. We came up with an adjustment facility that can support African governments and African corporates to give the push to African governments and countries to adopt the AFCFTA agreement and remove all trade barriers. So we give them an adjustment facility to help them adjust to the new situation for sectors or certain economies that will be negatively impacted by the adoption of this new free trade agreement. So we're doing a lot in that space, and we'll continue to do more. And we're happy to share that with all of you today. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I think one thing we also want to do is call out that Mrs. Kanayo, the MD for Intra-African Trade, visited last year, and she actually spent an hour, a full hour, and she also had a Q&A with CNBC Africa. So again, when I started today's event, I basically shared that we're building on the foundation. So for those just joining on with the Trade with Africa movement, what we are going to do is make those videos, because if you want to dig deeper and you want to really see more, we're going to start making our old videos available on our platform. So if anybody new joins in, we don't have to start all over again. They can just join us midstream. So we will make that video available, which also so this presentation builds on that. So when you talked about the Intra-African Trade Fair in 2018, it was such an honor. I was personally there. It was an amazing an experience of a lifetime to be right there for the first inaugural IATF. And that's why I'm super excited to be partnering and spreading the word to say, hey, I'm not the only one that needs to fly in this time around to Kigali next year. This is an event that basically, your bank, Afreximbank, is bringing all the who's who in African trade together. You're bringing all the exporters across the continent from about, I think, 55 countries to one location. So for me, as a, from an investment standpoint or an exporter standpoint, that's would I say, the easiest way to enter the African market is to show up when that work is already done for you. Because in this, you could decide to fly to, 40 countries and start going one by one, or you could decide to just attend the Intra-African Trade Fair and be able to connect immediately with the key stakeholders, the decision makers, from ministry leaders. So to your point, your bank is multilateral. So you do work with the African government. So in fact, in terms of, I don't know if you could share a little bit in terms of contracts that goes with government versus private sector. What does that look like? Because I think the last 20 years, people have not really seen the commercial activities on the private sector side. They've pretty much been engaging with governments. But I think the future of Africa really lies in activating direct trade engagement with the African private sector. So I don't know if you could share a little bit about what you've seen over the last couple of years in that space.
Yes, thank you so much. No, we strongly believe in the role of the private sector to develop Africa, and we believe in the message that we must support the private sector. And as I said, we look for successful companies across Africa, and we help other companies to emerge as intra-African trade champions. For example, throughout the year, we travel usually, of course, before the pandemic, and meet heads of states and key government officials. In those missions, we bring along our clients, our private sector, big corporates that can offer their services to the governments, and the government to offer their projects and the kind of projects they have. And we do this matchmaking. And we've done a lot in that space. We facilitated contracts between the private sector in Africa and other African governments of over $3 billion over the past 3 years. And we do that in the belief that we must give opportunities to African corporates to compete globally. For example, in Egypt, we have Arab contractors that does construction, and they operate in more than 15 African countries. We've supported them a lot in more than 6 African countries now, and we help them to compete with other Chinese construction companies. We're supporting Dangote of Nigeria. We're supporting OCP in Morocco, the largest phosphate fertilizer. We're supporting El Suidi of Egypt. We supported them in a project in Angola that we were competing against GE. General Electric. So we really believe in the message that we should support the African private sectors to compete globally and take more share of the business in Africa, and also support smaller kinds of business through giving lines of credit to commercial banks to be on lend to those relatively smaller companies. And also we understand that the problem of intra-African trade really lies in the trade information, the lack of trade information. Others will talk about the lack of infrastructure, tariffs, and all of that. We know that, yes, those are bottlenecks, those are restrictions, but the main restriction in our view is intra-African trade information availability. So if the information is there, if people in Egypt know what people in Nigeria need, and if Nigeria knows what Egypt produces, then the trade will happen, the connection will happen, the communication will start, and then the infrastructure will follow. And then people will find and establish means for that trade to happen. So we established a desk for trade information advisor services. We meet a lot of companies, private sector, who say we have the capacity, we want to export to West Africa, for example, or to South Africa, but we don't know the market, we don't know the people there, we don't know the opportunities. Can you help us with that? And we do this advice services. We do it from the first stage of doing a simple research on the opportunities, on the availability of the market there, all the way through to doing a joint roadshow for that company in this African market or in this African region to introduce them to the market and the local agencies and so on and so forth. So yes, you're absolutely correct. The support to the Africa private sector is key.
Right. Wow. Thank you for that. So I've also been following the work you're doing when it comes to currency across the continent. So when we talk about intra-African trade, we see a lot of currency issues. And you've also, I believe, was it last year you introduced, is it the PP? What's it called? I don't think people, I follow you guys. I read up everything. I'm subscribed to your newsletter. But can you please just educate our audience right now in terms of what you're doing in that space?
Yes, you're probably talking about the payment platform.
Exactly.
Payment and settlement platform.
Yes,
it's an electronic platform that we're trying to establish in collaboration with the African Union and African central banks that will be a platform, an electronic platform for trades. Not only it will be a platform for people to exchange information and do deals, but also be a clearinghouse. We could be clearing currencies so that dependency on foreign currency would be very low. So that if you can trade, Tanzania, for example, can trade with Egypt. So Tanzanians can pay in shilling and the Egyptians can take Egyptian pounds, and we do the clearing in between. So that the reliance on the foreign currency and trade among the Africans goes below the very high levels that we are witnessing now. We launched this in the meeting of the African Union last year with the head of the African Union, but we're doing an official launch in fourth quarter this year, which will be operational. The platform will actually be operational first quarter of this year.
Right. I personally think that's a game changer.
It is.
Yeah, not just for Africans. So it's good for Africans, but I think it's one of those things that the Western world needs to be looking at in terms of the impact to Forex and all of that. So I say Africa is on the move. So thank you so much for sharing that. So if anyone asks questions for our speakers, please again use the Q&A section, drop it. But I can really spend, just sitting and talking to you guys, because again, I know the role your organization plays. On this side, I try to tell people about your work, about IATF. So it's such a pleasure and honor again to have you. And on that note, I don't know, Janice, if you want me to start with playing the video, the short video of the IATF 2021, or do you want to go ahead, Janice, to talk about that? Whichever one you prefer.
If you could just enable me to share. I can't share.
Okay, let me make you a host. Are you changing the hosts? That's enable you. Do you want to try that? Oh, okay. I see two of your names. Let me change it to the. Okay, I think your colleague signed in as your name, so I picked the wrong Janice. So he has to probably, now that he's the host, he has to pass it on to you. So there are two names of yours in the platform.
Okay, maybe that's me. So maybe what do you want me to do?
I think you click on the other Janice and then make them the host. So they have the host name in brackets, and then you select the second Janice and then make them the host. Okay.
I've done that.
Ah, we can see you now. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Toyin, for giving us this opportunity to share inter-Africa trade with everybody. And good day to everyone who's online. As you're aware, Afreximbank, in collaboration with the African Union Commission and the government of the Republic of Rwanda, will host the second edition of the Inter-Africa Trade Fair in Kigali, Rwanda, from the 6th to the 12th of September, under the theme, Building Bridges for a Successful AFCFTA. Inter-Africa Trade Fair is the key event boosting trade in Africa. No other event brings together more professionals under one roof. In 2021, Our theme will focus on the newly launched African Continental Free Trade Area, a single market for goods and services across 55 countries aimed at boosting trade and investment. The Inter-Africa 2020 will provide, the Inter-Africa Trade Fair 2021 will provide a unique and valuable platform for businesses to access integrated African markets of over 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of over 2.5 trillion created under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We're going to focus on our objectives are bringing together continental and global players who are seeking business and investment opportunities in Africa. We serve as a marketplace where buyers and sellers can meet and continue to explore various business opportunities, provide a platform for B2B and B2G networking and development of business opportunities, share trade, investment, market information to identify solutions while addressing challenges affecting intra-African trade, to share information about Afreximbank's initiatives, trade finance, and trade facilitation interventions. The 2018 attracted over 2,500 conference delegates, 1,000 exhibitors from over 45 countries, resulting in over 32 billion worth of trade and investment deals were closed at our 2018 event. The second edition, which is in 2021 next year, is expected to be even bigger and aims to attract 5,000 conference delegates, 1,100 exhibitors, including over 1,000 buyers from over 55 countries who will engage to grow an investment on the African continent, and more than 40 billion in trade and investment deals are being targeted at Inter-Africa 2021. The key components of our second edition include an exhibition, trade and investment forum, virtual trade fair, country days, Creative Africa program, B2B, B2G exchanges, IATF Youth Startup Program, IATF Automotive Show. I'll cover further information on each one of them as we go on. The exhibition offering exhibitors opportunities to showcase their goods and services, providing a platform for countries and companies to identify credible partners that can facilitate foreign direct investment flow necessary for expanding Africa's productive capacity. The exhibition covers multiple sectors and will run for 7 days with a full jam-packed program covering speed networking, matchmaking, hosted buyers, workshops, and just much more. We'll also be covering various industries. Like I said, it's very multi-sectorial. The Trade and Investment Forum next year, our conference will address topical issues relating to trade finance, payments, trade facilitation, trade enabling infrastructure, trade standards, industrialization, regional value chains and investment. There will also be an opportunity for training exporters on how to access the African market with other African or global entities. A very exciting program is going to be our Creative Africa program. This is going to showcase Africa's creative economy. The program will showcase the creative economy in Africa over the 7 days, including a 2-day Creative Africa Summit, 7-day exhibition with dedicated area covering the creative sector, masterclasses, fashion shows, and many more. The country days, we have countries who have been invited to bid for the country day feature. There will only be 5 country days available, and selected countries will have the opportunity to showcase their trade, investment, tourism, and cultural opportunities. We've also introduced our automotive show. This is a dedicated area within the exhibition focused on automotive. This is the automotive's opportunity to showcase what the continent has to offer through various networking opportunities, meetings, and workshops. Another addition to the fair is our Youth Startup Program. We'll have a dedicated pavilion for the youth startups in Africa, where they will showcase their goods and services. IATF 2021 will provide opportunities for matchmaking with venture capitalists, training programs, networking amongst the youth and other delegates. And we've got our virtual trade fair platform. The virtual trade fair enables virtual participation by buyers and sellers in the trade as a 365, 24/7 platform, reigniting economies and allowing inter-African trade to continue. The virtual trade fair has virtual booths, hosts webinars, and facilitates virtual engagement between buyers and sellers. IATF Virtual Trade Fair is an innovative and cost-effective platform to promote, educate, sell your products and services to a larger audience of key players. The benefits cover various things. So IATF brings together exhibitors and visitors from all sectors. It provides a year-round platform for attendees and non-attendees alike to connect in real time during the event and during the rest of the year and in between trade fairs. Our virtual platform is a dynamic and convenient way to visit. IATF identify investment opportunities, source products, network with exhibitors, engage in dialogue, identify solutions and strategies, create partnerships, and do business as well. And our booth cost is only $750 per booth for a 12-month subscription. This is just showing you, if you log on to our platform, it shows you where you can actually go and register. You just go onto the Inter-Africa Trade Fair platform and you click onto Virtual Trade Fair, create your free account if you could do that, and you can just take a feel and go around the Virtual Trade Fair platform and just get a feel for what you'll be getting and how it works. We've also got our merch store, which is really great, a marketplace and online, an opportunity to purchase official IATF merchandise, as well as an opportunity for exhibitors to use the platform through the IATF marketplace to sell their products. We will be using various communication channels, which we're already doing. We've got, so we're promoting and communicating through multiple channels across multiple continents. The campaign includes ongoing promotions about the various components of the event through media buying platforms, including TV and digital, social media, the VTF, network engagements such as Toyans, through live events across the world. There are various opportunities that you actually can take advantage in IATF 2021. Get your brand associated and a captive audience who will be your next business opportunity. IATF and its affiliates are recognized as thought leaders with networks that reach far and wide. So for the sponsorship opportunities, we have various packages, which I've just listed. So we have various packages, but they're not limited to these. We cater for big businesses, for small businesses. You can contact me at any time. We can even do you a custom package for a sponsorship opportunity to actually take part in Rwanda. And actually, you can actually take part from now. And as a partner, you will benefit from branding rights. You're going to have access to over 1,000 buyers, 1,100 exhibitors, and 10,000 visitors. So IATF is the only platform where you're going to have access to meet 55 African governments, qualified global hosted buyers, and an investor. So it is really a unique opportunity to get involved in. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to contact myself or my colleague Chardonnay. We will issue this presentation to Toyin. And if anyone wants to speak to me at any time with any participation for IATF, I'm available at any time. Thank you, Toyin.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Also, just to share a little bit that we are actually going after this event, we're also now talking about doing something, you know, just to keep pushing this forward sometime in October. So once we're able to lock down data and everything, so everyone that's on our platform here in the US as well, and those who join us virtually, we will be very, very excited to share that announcement with you. So for me, I say when we talk about trade with Africa, it doesn't get better than actually the practical side of it. You know, I usually, those who follow me know that I say talk is cheap. A lot of us, we talk about trade with Africa, and we say this, this is the time to show up. This is the time to be in the room. This is the time to explore the opportunities and be a part of the movement to transform Africa. So like I said, if you have questions, please do drop that comment in the Q&A area. And I'm looking now if you have specific questions for African Export-Import Bank or the IATF 2021. Like I said, this is just a teaser in terms of what it is. So one thing I want to also do, I do love that video, Janice, that you sent. I want to see if I can quickly share that video as well.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. All the way from Cairo, Egypt and South Africa. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. So.
Join Africa's largest trade and investment fair in Rwanda. Intra-African Trade Fair gives you access to more than 1,100 exhibitors, 10,000 visitors and buyers, and more than 5,000 conference delegates from more than 55 countries. Participate in trade and investment deals worth $40 billion as business and government come together to explore business and networking opportunities at the International Exhibition. Brought to you by the African Export-Import Bank and their premium partners, the IATF 2021, Transforming Africa. Join Africa's largest trade.
So that's just a teaser. We also do have on our Nazaru, my company's YouTube, you can also see videos from the previous engagements and all the various activations that happen all across the continent. We also hosted one here in Chicago to keep the conversation going within the diaspora and the Western investor as well. So I'm looking at the time. It looks like we're really moving fast. We actually have time to take a long break, stretch your legs, take your coffee break, and let's be back here in about 27 minutes. Because one thing I do recognize is that sitting at your computer is very, very, very different from if we were all in person. So I know we're running a little bit ahead, which is great. We're going to give more time for networking. So I also see that business is already being done in the chat room here. I see people exchanging contacts and sharing their work. I tell you, it's just been an honor to see the types of individuals that are super interested in the work that we do. The other thing that we'll be doing after we return is that we're going to be actually shutting off the live streaming. So if you're watching live, we want to thank you so much for watching live. We're going to then dedicate the rest of today and tomorrow to the private conversations that the registered attendees they're here for. So if you still want to join us, you can still join us midstream in the webinar and also on the platform that we have. And the website you go to is www.twasummit.com, and you can register, and it takes you directly into the trade platform, because that's where we'll be sharing all the information that Afreximbank is bringing us. And then later tomorrow as well, I will be sharing our next steps and how we want to keep engagements going. So this is not just a one-time introduction to what's going on. So thank you, everyone. We're going to take a longer break now. Again, enjoy your coffee. Typically, I would have told you the coffee is sponsored by Westrock Coffee, because they usually are our official coffee sponsors in person when we host this event in person. So hopefully next year you can try some Rwandan coffee courtesy of Westrock Coffee. Thank you again, and see you in now 25 minutes. Be back here, or like me, just leave the webinar on and just take your break, coffee break, whatever, bathroom break, whatever you need to do, and we'll be back. And also we'll be ending the live streaming, but keeping the Zoom engagement. Thank you, it's such an honor, and see you in a bit. When we return, we'll be talking about trade and investment opportunities in Morocco with Ms. Rabia Alamina, the Managing Director for American Chamber of Commerce in Morocco. So thank you again, and see you in a bit.
Fire, 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 fire.
Ransom got that sauce in it. Ransom got that sauce in it.
Ransom got